Picture this. You are 7 and the smell of biryani just wafts inside your room from the kitchen. You just get the smell and your stomach starts to growl, just like Pavlov's dog. Fast forward to now. You're at the gym and you just finish a killer workout and your gym trainer says, "Good job," and you feel like a Greek god. So what do you do tomorrow? You come back for the praise, for the high five, for that feeling of being a Greek god. One is classical conditioning and the other is operant conditioning. Same brain, different hacks. And today I'm going to walk you through both. Not like a textbook lecture, but like a journey through your mind. Welcome to Learn Psychology with Div, where we decode human behavior and your mind one relatable story at a time. Today's tale, classical and operant conditioning. The two ways that your mind learns without you even realizing it. We'll start with the tale of classical conditioning. Let's rewind to 1890s Russia, where there's a scientist named Ivan Pavlov. He's a psychologist trying to learn a dog's digestive system. He notices something strange. Dogs start salivating even before the food arrives, just by hearing the footsteps of the guy who's carrying the food. So Pavlov's like, wait a minute, what if this is learning? So he runs an experiment. Every time he feeds the dog, he rings a bell. In the beginning, the bell does nothing for the dog. But after a few rounds of Pavlov ringing the bell, the food coming in, the dog seeing the food and salivating, eventually made the dog just salivate by the sound of the bell. Not the food, just the expectation that yes, my food is coming towards me. This is classical conditioning. And it works something like this. I would suggest that for the next part of the video, you follow through with the presentation that I have linked in the description because it will help you understand the concept much better. There are 5 important terms in classical conditioning that you might want to make note of. First is the unconditioned stimulus, which is something that naturally causes a response. In this case of the dog, it's the food. Next, we have the unconditioned response, which is a natural response to a stimulus. In this case, is the salivation. Then we have the neutral stimulus, which is basically something meaningless at first. In this case, it's the bell, or like the ringing of the bell. Next, we have the conditioned stimulus, which is basically the pairing of the natural stimulus and unconditioned stimulus over time. Again, in this case, the conditioned stimulus is the bell because the dog gets conditioned to respond to the bell. Then we have the conditioned response, which is the new response that has been learned. Basically, the salivation of the dog towards the bell. Over time, the neutral stimulus becomes a conditioned stimulus, and that conditioned stimulus triggers a conditioned response. No thoughts involved, just associations. A real-life example of this would be when you walk by a Domino's or a KFC. Even if you have just ate food, you start to salivate or you start to crave that food because you see their branding or their advertisement and you know that their food is going to be delicious. It also presents in life as phobias. As a child, if a kid is chased by a dog and he has trauma from it, then he will just have phobias from all dogs in the world. We can also see classical conditioning in love and music. Maybe you used to listen to some sort of music or a song during an emotional phase in your life. Maybe a breakup, or maybe during your first crush, or maybe for your mother or for your father. So every time you hear that song, it reminds you of that person or that moment. That's conditioning. Now let's move on to the tale of operant conditioning. From Russia, let's fast forward to America, the 1930s. Enter B.F. Skinner, a black box thinker and a radical behaviorist. He says, forget associations. Behavior depends on consequences. He builds the Skinner box, which is basically a chamber with a hungry rat inside it. Inside the chamber, there is also a lever, which, if pushed, opens up a hole and drops down a food pellet. Now the hungry rat is running around frantically inside the chamber and mistakenly or accidentally presses the lever. The rat sees that pushing the lever opens up a hole and a food pellet drops down. The rat's like, yo, I like this lever. Presses it again and more food follows. Soon, it's obsessed. Somewhat like us with Instagram likes. This is operant conditioning, where we learn through rewards and punishments. Operant conditioning, unlike classical conditioning, has 4 core concepts. Again, you might want to follow through with the presentation for your betterment. The first concept is reinforcement, which tends to increase a certain behavior, like getting paid for work or bonuses. Then we have punishment, which basically decreases a certain kind of behavior. Then we have positive and negative, which is basically adding something or subtracting something. So yes, this is not the normal positive or negative that we talk about in common parlance. This is a bit different. Positive would be giving a reward or scolding, and negative would be removing a chore or freedom. Exactly. We do not associate freedom with negative or scolding with positive. This is where operant conditioning can get a bit tricky or confusing. With these 4 concepts, we get 4 pairings. First, we have positive reinforcement, where we add something good, like praise for good work or a bonus for good work to an employee. Then we have negative reinforcement, where we remove something bad, like the seatbelt alarm in your car switches off when you put the seatbelt on. So to reinforce that good behavior of putting the seatbelt on, the irritating seatbelt alarm, it switches off. It works as an incentive for you to put the seatbelt on. Then we have positive punishment, which is basically adding something bad, like scolded for being late to somewhere, like to a party or when you're in school. And then we have negative punishment, where we remove something which is good, like if you flunk your exams or if your exams didn't go well, your parents take your phone away. That's a negative punishment, where something good is taken away because of something bad. The focus here is what happens after the action. Real life examples of operant conditioning can be seen in workplaces predominantly, because when an employee does very well, it is incentivized by giving them bonuses or a salary hike. Even in parenting, when a child lies, the child is grounded with the hopes that he will stop lying. And in social media, you post a reel after 3-4 unsuccessful reels, and that one reel goes up to have 1000 views or 1000 likes. That incentivizes you to post another reel the next day or the next week with the hope that yes, another reel can go up to 1000 likes. Now, you might be thinking, wait, aren't these two just learning through a pattern? Yes, but they differ in how and why the learning happens. In classical conditioning, the learner is passive, whereas in operant conditioning, the learner is active. Classical conditioning is based on association, while operant conditioning is based on consequences. Response is voluntary in operant conditioning, but it's involuntary in classical conditioning. The next is not really a difference, but classical conditioning was developed by Ivan Pavlov and operant conditioning was developed by B.F. Skinner. If I have to give you a real-life example of classical conditioning and operant conditioning on the same scale, then imagine that you are training a dog. In classical conditioning, just like before, you try and ring a bell before the dog gets the food. And you'll see that eventually the dog starts salivating with the sound of the bell even before the dog sees the food. You can try and train a dog to, let's say, sit or give you a high five. And every time the dog does it successfully, you give it a treat. Once you give the treat, the dog is satisfied, and in future the dog will repeat the behavior. The classical conditions emotions and reflexes, and operant trains habits and choices. But both forms of conditioning comes with a fine print, and you should know this. There can be extinction. If the bell rings and the dog salivates, but the food doesn't come, or the food stops coming eventually, then the dog will stop salivating with the sound of the bell. The behavior will eventually fade away. But the memory is intact. The memory doesn't die, it's just sleeping, which we call spontaneous recovery. Basically, let's say suddenly a random bell rings somewhere weeks later and boom, the dog drools again. So like I said, the memory isn't dead, it's just sleeping. There is also something very interesting called generalization, where you are bitten once by a dog and then suddenly you fear all dogs in the world. And then of course, like everything else, there is discrimination. Let's say you get bit by one of the dogs in your street, but you grew up with a very cute golden retriever who belongs to your neighbor. So now you are scared of every other street dog, but golden retrievers are still fine. These mechanisms explain everything, from addiction to trauma to why we tend to fall for the same people again and again. Your mind is constantly learning, quietly, automatically, and relentlessly. Whether it's the ting of the notification sound or just the satisfaction of completing a task, you are being conditioned every day. The good news? Well, once you understand the rules of classical and operant or classical versus operant, you can spot the triggers, rewrite habits, and train your brain like a dog. Or maybe better. So next time you crave pizza after hearing a Domino's advertisement, you know what's up. This is Learn Psychology with Div. Subscribe, like, and comment if you like my videos.